So I have the pleasure of doing an interview with Avi, who is spending a lot of time in Berlin right now. Maybe Avi, you want to quickly introduce yourself and what you're doing at TAP?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I've been chilling here in Berlin. This is by far the best city in Europe I've been to, so I love it here. Yeah.
He knows how to make friends.
Yeah, too many details, but I'm basically building this wearable that you see right here. It's essentially an always-on microphone that kind of streams to your phone and off to the server. I guess it's kind of this idea of like ambient computing and AI and kind of like what you can do with that together. And really just the idea of like proactivity versus reactivity, which I think is very important, just AI assistance. There's a lot of other like people trying to do AI hardware stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's start there, AI hardware, because you are also playing in the AI hardware wearable space. We chatted yesterday actually, and maybe you can just share like how do you see TAP? How do you see other devices like the Rabbit? What's your take on this wave of new AI hardware?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting ones is definitely Humane. I think what they used to pitch was very interesting, right? Like a dumb phone. I think that made a lot of sense. I mean, I personally want that. But these days they've been kind of pitching it as like a contextual computer, right? Because now everyone's obsessed with AI and they seem to have really pivoted their product. But I think if you were to design a contextual computer from the ground up, it would be something that's always on, right? If you look at something like Humane, it only has a 4-hour battery life, and that's without it being always on, right? Like that, you're only going to interact with it for like 15 minutes a day, versus if you wear like essentially an always on microphone, I mean, you're going to have like 15 hours of context, right? There's a lot more you can do with that. So, I mean, Humane, they're also, I mean, their product has so many overkill features in it. For example, like an LTE module and a projector and a camera and all these things. I think ultimately too, for AI wearables to take off, they kind of need to be like easier to adopt. I think consumers are far more terrified of like a camera looking at them than just a microphone. And in my opinion too, I think there's a lot more you can do with just audio and location data. For example, there's a lot of background noise in audio usually, right? Like maybe at a bar or walking down the street or something, which also gives you a lot of contextual clues to like what your environment you're actually in, like in a way visually, without needing to actually put a camera on there. Yeah.
And so Humane is one thing, which is like a pin you put on. There are other devices like the Rabbit, which is more like, what is it? Like a square with a camera and a LLM on it.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbit's another one of these kinds of things. It's essentially like, the ChatGPT app in your phone. There's like a camera and you can kind of like take pictures of things and ask questions about it. I think it's cool that they're making it like a separate piece of hardware. I mean, they're really trying to explain why it can't be an app. And in my opinion, it definitely can be an app. The fact that they're even having that conversation in the first place, it tells you all you need to know. But I think also it's just, you just don't know what to ask when you have an assistant, right? I think this is the same issue with everything from the Humane pin to the Meta glasses, to Rabbit's thing or whatever other people are working on. It's just like right now, I have no idea what I would use my Rabbit for, right? What question am I going to ask? When am I going to ask it? I think the idea of something that's kind of always observing your environment and that knows you really well and knows when to kind of proactively step in. I think that's definitely more of the future of AI that I think people want. I want more background processes in my life, kind of just like a helping spirit, like guiding hand in a way. It's almost like a feeling of God, right? Rather than just like more work that I have to do that is kind of unnatural, even though they're using like natural language.
Oh, like there's a question. Well, yeah. Is that okay? Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I love you talking about the Rabbit. The Rabbit's also a very popular women's hardware device. So whenever you say it, I'm like,
oh, yeah.
Did nobody Google? Like, Abby, I've been following the journey you've been on TAB for ages, and I think what's really interesting about it is with women's hardware in public, which is quite unusual. Like, you look at Apple, you look at Humane, they go in the garage for like 5 years and they come out and they're like, ta-da. Can you tell us more about the process? I particularly want to pick up on the last thing of like, it's like a little god with a small g. Because we talk entirely about that, but I want to hear more about the iteration process of like how you came to build TAB.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's way better to get people's feedback in real time. Most of the like Twitter is just a great sounding board to see what people kind of like. And I think Humane has had this like same problem, right? Where you build in secrecy for like 6 years, you raise all this money. but then your product just doesn't really fit the current way. I mean, if you're going to build in private, you got to just move faster. I think it's not like a bad strategy. But the building in public too, I think is pretty good to primarily for the manufacturability side of things, because this is something that you need to plan out like 6 months in advance, right? If you're actually going to be producing like tens of thousands of units. And so kind of seeing like, okay, do people actually want this? Because that's the only thing that matters. And I do think if these other products kind of did that, I think they would, like, the thing about Rabbit, right? You can sell $10 million of like a Tamagotchi looking toy, but like, I mean, that's great, but can you sell like $500 million of it? I don't think most people have the pocket space, or it's just such a, like, you know, when you're building a new product, it has to be 10x better than what previously existed, right? But if you're building like a consumer electronic, especially wearable, it has to be like 100,000 times better. And I like to say that Rabbit doesn't have a subscription fee because I don't think you're going to be paying for it after more than a month. Just again, like what are you going to actually use it for? Think about your entire day. Did you really need to like look at a fucking pomegranate and like ask a question about like how many like nutrients are in it? Like yeah, sorry.
It's like you can see versus the light, right? Because to me, the Rabbit feels like a little Tamagotchi toy. It's like a teenage engineering kind of beautiful thing to put in your house because you're rich. And I think there's a difference between that and utility. I think what you're building is far more utilitarian, right? It's meant to be a companion piece. So I just think
Right.
there's different use cases.
Yeah, I mean, it's different use cases, but it's just ultimately like, it's just, is it a useful product? It's the only thing that really matters. But thank you.
So maybe like touching upon the idea of building in public. So one of the advantages that you get a lot of feedback, right? So you put something out and you see how people react to it. When you look at the reactions that you got for the first version of Tab, what would you say are like the bullish signals? So what do people tell you that makes you bullish that we're gonna have AI wearables in the future? And maybe also, what do people say that makes you a little bit more bearish? I know you're probably not bearish on this, otherwise you wouldn't build it, but maybe what are kind of like some concerns people bring up?
Yeah, I think one thing that I find to be very interesting is most people would be like, oh, there's no way I'm going to wear like an always-on microphone. But you will if the utility is that high. And I think like, maybe it's kind of weird to say it like that, but ultimately that's the number one thing to focus on, where I think people have wanted to build a product like this for a while, but it wasn't cheap enough to run things like Whisper. It wasn't cheap enough to run LLMs. They didn't even exist. They weren't that good. But yeah, I'm trying to think. I just like, I have no doubt, because there is no doubt. But what like some other kind of reactions? I think I'm primarily still surprised that there isn't more people putting the same idea of proactivity into more things than just like a hardware. Like, you don't need hardware to really do that. There's just like many streams of context that people, like, the only things that are really left to build is like either gathering like novel context streams or building like foundational models. And I think building foundational models is, I mean, it's kind of just like, I'm not a researcher. Like, that is, you can do that if you want, but you need like hundreds of millions of dollars. But I think there's so many opportunities to just, now that you can like take unstructured feeds of things and now you can make that structured, and you can have a very cheap stream of that, and you can be proactive with that, right? Send the user some kind of notification, or like, you know, even with like basic SaaS products, like, I think it's kind of silly to see, like, I think we'll look back on it as like some kind of like Y2K type of thing, that there's a chatbot in like every single application. I think would be far more interesting is something that kind of is proactively watching to see what you're doing and kind of jumps in at the right time to help you. If you're adding like, you know, a chatbot to like some Salesforce type of thing, it's kind of like what Clippy was, right? But I mean, I think Clippy actually, it was just at the wrong time. I think it would actually be like the right UX for something.
There's another question.
Another question, but like, what for you then is like key, let's say, prerequisite for good proactivity, basically?
I mean, it's just like, do you find it useful? I mean, that's the only thing that matters. Like, you just got to be very honest with yourself. Like, is this actually providing me value or not? Yeah.
So the fun part for preparing for this, I went through your X or Twitter feed, which is full of very interesting takes. And just maybe to add something to like usefulness is, I think you wrote it that you want to build something that when people forget to put it on, they go back to the house because they don't want to live without it. And maybe this also reminded me a little bit about the form factor. So, because if there's going to be an AI device that we carry around with us, you chose like a necklace. If other people chose a like a pin. Mm-hmm. The Rabbit, I'm not sure if it's even the same category, but chose to be more a device. what's your view on the ultimate form factor that will convince people to, or what needs to be true to be an excellent form factor for wearable?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a necklace. Primarily if you're building something that has a microphone on it, like the kind of functionality that you need, right, is a microphone that's close to your voice and other people's voices. It can't be obstructed. You need to have like a battery that can actually power something like this to be all day. And wearing a giant battery like that on like your ear or like on your wrist or something like that just doesn't work. And again, if there's something on your wrist, you're usually wearing long sleeves, your hands in your pockets, moving around. It's not close to your voice. There's a lot of other constraints there too. I think it's just at the end of the day, there's this principle called Maya, which I think applies to everything in life, not just products. But I think it's like most advanced yet familiar, something like that. It's really just like when you're building something that's so kind of disruptive and so new, you want it to feel as familiar as possible. And like virtually every culture on this planet has worn necklaces, especially pendants, especially circles. Something like a pin is a like I don't think there's a single person in here wearing a pin, but I guarantee you there's many people in here wearing necklaces. Pins, I tried all these form factors too. Pins drag on your shirt, you look like an idiot. It's just like you're constantly changing clothes too, right? Like I'm always putting a jacket on, taking a jacket off. Like where are you gonna put it? What if you're like a girl and you're not really like wearing like just a thing where you can just put a pin so easily on it? I think they're just I really don't know why they went for the pin, honestly. It doesn't make any sense.
That's fair point. What do you think about ear devices? Like, because obviously the first thing probably.
I mean, there's not a single person in here wearing an ear device either, right? Like, it's got to be familiar. I think another great thing too is you want to kind of hide it at the right time, right? Like, I can just put this underneath my shirt, right? And now it's gone, and you can't take it. There's also exposure to the elements too is a really big thing. If you're raining, and your stupid little pin out. Like, I mean, I just think it's just it's not a familiar form factor, and because the actual like use case and the tech I think is the very disruptive part. I think you want to make the rest of it as smooth as possible, right?
So it's going to be necklaces. That's
well, one more thing too actually is like I definitely plan on adding a camera to a device like this. And what's great about a necklace is it's facing outwards, right? So you can very easily it's kind of like a body cam, right? It's also just again like the weight, I don't feel it at all, right? It's basically a giant battery, but your neck is a fantastic anchor. It also just I think it will look pretty cool down the line as well.
You talked about proactivity a little bit, or what context, what is very important. So that also means that you interact with your like tap, and if it's a necklace here, you probably cannot see it. So where would you, like maybe even in the current version, how do you interact with your tap?
Yeah, right now there's just kind of like a mobile app that you communicate with. I'm not getting into too many details right now, but yeah, I mean the functionality way is you basically are streaming audio over BLE, and your phone is able to send that off to the server in the background, and that's just kind of like the basic primitive. The interesting part though is you're recording such low quality audio because we're not storing transcripts or audio. You just process it and delete it, kind of like an Alexa. But what's interesting, right, is you can record audio that's so low quality that you can actually pass it through BLE. Whereas before, if you were making like a Bluetooth microphone, right, like you would probably want it to be pleasant to listen to. But now, like things like Whisper, etc., can run. They're mostly trained on like shitty audio. It's not for humans to listen to, right? It's just kind of like an ear for your AI.
So, is there any more? Oh man, I love this. That's good. That's cool. It's interactive.
Hello, a quick question. I find fascinating everything you're saying, but I'm out of loop. I never heard about tab before. Like, what's the use of it?
Not getting too much into that right now. I'm sorry. I've been cooking here in Berlin. I'm telling you, there's a lot of information you can find on my Twitter. Some kind of older demos. I think you can see. I think, yeah. Well, I'm not getting too much into that right now.
Well, but the tab is what you can see. Like, no, you're hiding it, but it's this device which is always on, which is listening to your conversations.
Yeah.
Imagine like Apple spent so many years on the AirPods, right? Like how the microphone should be, how the noise should be canceled and everything. So do you think that you can beat them in the design of the hardware, or you rather try to do the AI application so differently that they cannot do, so that you will get an advantage?
Yeah, I think my ultimate end use case is just like like fundamentally very different than anything Apple is going to do. I like the one thing I will say is like I am not building an assistant at all. I think if there's I'm not going to get into it too much, but I want to. I know there's the whole concept of building in public, and that's kind of what I did, right? And I've got very useful feedback, and from that, I think you kind of do like a half step, right? Maybe build in public for the first half, and then after that, realize you're building an actual company. You gotta ship something soon.
So like you don't want to talk about what tab is going to be, and I think this is totally cool and totally respect that. Well, you said you're not going to build an assistant, and Fabian was also talking about assistants earlier, saying, well, with the prompt injection, he's not super bullish on this yet. So maybe you can tell us, why are you not building an assistant?
I just think it's not going to make my life that much better if I can book a flight slightly faster, or just in general the world, right? I think the one thing I like to say is there's a lot I want to say, but like my cat is worth so much more to me than my Alexa, which can answer any question, right? I just assistants are cool, but there's a billion other companies doing these kinds of things. No one is going to beat Apple or OpenAI or Google building some kind of mass marketable assistant. I think there's a lot of really cool, early products that are definitely going to take some ground. I mean, there's a lot of really cool assistants that work right now. A lot of people building in agents, right? Like I live in San Francisco. I see this stuff all the time. It's very cool, but ultimately, you can build something cool in the short term and sell it or get a couple of users, make some money, and that's cool. Or you can like build a new category of product, and I think that's far more interesting. But yeah.
So you also said on your Twitter that nobody will beat Apple and OpenAI at building Javas. So is this like your view that one of these two or both will be like owning the assistant space in the long term, or the agent space?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's idealistic to think otherwise. I mean, I respect the people that are trying, for sure. They will definitely come up with interesting things, but like you do have to be real. It depends on your end goal. If you want to build a new category, if you want to build something interesting and fun for now.
And maybe like to jump back to an earlier point, you said that like one of the reactions was people asking, would they wear an always on device? And what like, so because we met yesterday and I think you just woke up, so you hadn't turned on your tab. It was very early in the morning. And I remember like you kind of like putting it out, turning it on, it starts have this like blue light. It felt strange for a second, like knowing that now everything I say will be recorded. How like do you think that humans will get familiar or get comfortable with the idea that there will be other humans around them that have always on audio devices?
I mean, everyone pretty much has that in this room right now, and there's Amazon Echoes in most people's places too. I think again, because we're not storing anything. You don't need to. You know how expensive it would be for me to store like always on audio for every human on this planet? That would be ridiculous. Yeah, I think it's just far more interesting to see what you can kind of like extract essentially from like real-time context, and how you can kind of map that to your own structure, whatever you're really doing with that. I mean, it's kind of like if you're taking notes, right? You write down like the general idea of what's being said. You don't write down literally word for word like a transcript, right? I think when you start storing things like that, I think it becomes a bit more privacy acceptable.
So you're saying by not storing the whole conversation, but just bullet points of it, it doesn't feel as like, I don't know if there's the right word, but privacy invading, as if I knew that everything is recorded and you could just go like rewind, for example, you could go back in time and look exactly what I said at that moment. So
right, yeah, I mean this product is not like again, it's not like an assistant where you're just going to go have a word for word transcript everything you said and take a look through that. I think there's a lot of like, I definitely explored versions of that. Like I've built all the assistant stuff in the past, and this is why I just don't think it's that interesting. And things like Rewind with their little pendant that records everything. I mean, I think that's cool, but it's just not that useful. Like even their core product with something that's on your screen, which I think is even more useful, really. It's just like, it doesn't improve my life that much. And you can do this, you can build, I mean, I guarantee you some people out there would find interesting use cases. It would probably change society in a bit, but I don't think it's going to appear like in a rap song or something. It's not going to be like a ubiquitous cultural defining product. And again, it just depends on your goal. That is my goal, but maybe it's not Rewinds.
So which rapper will rap about the tab first? What is it like the ultimate goal? Like who should rap about tab?
I really like the iPod song. Like got my iPod stuck on replay. If the same guy wrote a song about Tab, that would be pretty cool. But I'm telling you, we're cooking. I've already renamed it from Tab. It's going to be interesting. You're going to love it.
It's definitely interesting. Maybe
I see you as a question.
Oh, what? Sorry, I was like looking at my questions here.
Too talkative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
That's
really.
great.
I want to go back to that piece around kind of culture and context, right? So I used to live in San Francisco. I now live in London. It's the most surveilled city in the world. So I think to your point, we're being tracked everywhere. And, you know, Germans historically have had a different attitude to privacy to other parts of the world. But I think what's interesting about, if I think about the hometown that I grew up in, which is very far from London, very far from San Francisco, I'll be speaking to like a hometown friend and they'll be asking me about AI. It's one of these technologies that has had this incredible burst of mainstream awareness in the last year. And I think, you know, San Francisco typically builds products that launch, they're living in the future. And then the rest of the world catches up. And there are these moments of inflection points. When you think about tab / name TBC / name redacted, let's call it, how do you think about the first group that are loving it versus the next group that are going to love
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, I actually think this is where I'm most excited for a product like this, because I think ChatGPT is really cool, but most people, again, just they have no idea what to ask it. The cold start issue, I think, as Fabian was saying earlier, is like one of the biggest problems with all the assistants and stuff out there. And because my product is primarily like a proactive thing, you just go about your life as you usually do, and all of a sudden your life gets better, and you get to see like very powerful AI, more than just like a quick query, right? Because you can do far more advanced queries than you would ever really come up with in the first place. Like I really like using a product like Perplexity for this too, right? Where they have the Copilot that like takes your query and then kind of comes up with a better query, right? This is like it's still, that's not really, it's like semi-proactive, right? But I think that'll kind of like a product like this will really show the power of AI to most. I mean, most people have really not tried anything more than 3.5, right? Yeah, that'll be pretty cool.
I realize the audience asked much better questions than I. So are there more questions here? Wait, maybe we can get a microphone, because then I think everyone can hear the question. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, simple question: where do you take inspiration from to build this, like product-wise, brand-wise, everything-wise?
I think the only way you really figure that out is to just go about your life and look at things that you like and develop your own taste. I think taste is the only thing that really matters going forward too, especially with all like the infinite content generation stuff, right? This is in some ways the same thing that happened when there was like the digital music revolution, right? Like everyone kind of became their own DJ, but they kind of hated that, right? And people love the kind of people that curated playlists, but you really only like curate something or have taste when you just go about your life and have very strong opinions. I think more people need to have strong opinions. I think you can tell that I have very strong opinions, right? I think that's just the foundation of it. I can say you can look up to all these specific people, right? But the only thing that they're doing is the exact same thing I'm saying. It is just have opinions and be confident in it. I think all agency boils down to is just confidence in your thoughts, right? So just have more confident thoughts. That's it. And you make sure they're smart thoughts, I guess.
How do you think about, like, because when you try new things, and building in public also probably has the risk of failing, and probably you're trying a lot of things, you're going to fail. Like you try 10 things, you're going to fail 8 times. How do you deal with failure? Like you said, like it all boils down to confidence. Like how do you personally handle or deal with failure?
I mean, I don't know, skill issue. It's just I don't know, just it's like mistakes are definitely like I think you just need to know when to pivot, right? I've pivoted this product like a dozen times, and I think Jackson and Robert here know that I changed the idea of it like every fucking second. And I think you need to have like a general idea. I think also one thing I've noticed is your first idea ends up actually being the best idea. Even like I notice if I like take photos, you take like a dozen photos, the first photo you take is often actually the best one. Funny enough as that kind of is, or it kind of like adapts over time. But I just gotta kind of go through the idea maze and figure it out and not get. Like, I mean, it depends on what you're working on, right? I think if you're doing something that's hardware based, you don't really have a luxury of like, I'm just going to completely change everything, right? Because again, you have like 6-month cycles of manufacturability and things like that. But yeah, I don't know.
There were more questions here. Yeah, over there.
I've got 2 interlinked questions. So I'm not too sure whether you said tonight you called the tab as a wearable mum, which I think it's a very, very good description, because maybe only 10% of our lives are lived in a physical context, whereas the 90% of the context comes from emails, WhatsApps, whatever. And the tab gives you unprompted feedback, like a mom. So are you assuming that people want to have a mom next to them all the time? Is that one of the theses?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know if I would 100% describe it as a wearable mom anymore, but it's definitely part of the ideas. But also the thing you were saying too, there's plenty of other context streams, right, that you could feed into this. Personally, this product I'm not checking your emails, your texts, or anything like that. It is solely just what's right here. Because again, I think like you will just fundamentally not like there's not even an iMessage API, right? And most people here probably are using or I don't know, I'm in Europe, but like yeah, you're just fundamentally not going to beat some of these companies that hold the data stream, right? So you need to create your own data stream and own that. I think again, like I'm going to stress it again. I think the only really important thing to do is to focus on obtaining novel context streams and building. Context is the product, right? This is why I love something like Cursor. They just figured out a way to use like a novel context of like my code base and make it really easy to use. As you can see, these are some of the biggest winners in AI, or people that are just doing that.
Yep. As a follow-up question, because Niklas mentioned rewind. So rewind strategy is take the digital context first. They had a workaround of basically recording a screen 24/7, and they are launching their own physical interface now. How do you see? Is rewind your key competitor now after they launch it, or how do you see your position?
Dan has no taste. I have no fear in him. I have a lot of takes on that, but I think ultimately, again, they're building a fundamentally different product. I just don't think focusing on memory is that interesting because again, I actually am wearing what they're building, right? I've built what they've done. It's just not that interesting. I really don't care that much about being reminded about things. I also think there's a lot to be said about like I don't ever check back at my notes. All I use is Apple Notes, right? But like I never look back at the notes I take before. Just the act of writing things down. That's really nice. I think the only way you can kind of completely remove that is if you really control the like putting the memories back into your life so you can fully rely on a system like that. I just don't think we're there yet. So I think any system that kind of does half of that is just it's okay, but it's just not that interesting.
Can you confirm my conclusion? So your conclusion might be that what we humans really want is just a short-term context. We don't want to dig out the memories from a year or two before. We just instinctively appreciate a mom telling us not to do it again, what happened 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think what would be the most interesting thing to do is to connect memories together proactively and put that back into your life. Right. That would be the most interesting use case of a product like that.
Thanks.
Very good questions. One, like I think, like we can do two more questions.
Okay, I found really interesting about you talking about the data sources that you are looking to find a new data source because the others are already taken. What other kind of data source, not voice related, are you thinking about that would be new?
Yeah, definitely visuals, right? I think audio, like the reason why I started with audio is I think if you were to choose a single data stream out of your entire life, I think Audible Conversations is the closest there is to like a digital clone of you, right? Like there's another product out there called like Delphi or something like that that like makes a digital clone of you out of your Twitter, your YouTube, your LinkedIn, whatever. And it just sucks because these things are not actually you, right? They're digital abstractions of you. You're a very different. It's not like a raw. It's not you at the source. But audio is a great version of that. Visuals too. Like there's maybe let's say Whoop. I actually think Whoop is doing something very interesting. They have like a little proactive AI coach. These are just context streams that are as closest to like the source as possible. I think that's what I would focus on. Right. Like another reason why I think like Rewind's approach of let's say like looking at your emails and whatever, you're not going to be sending an email in 5 years. I mean, I barely send emails in the first place, or at least reply to them, right? I would just focus on the source. I think ultimately where it's all headed is like brain computer interface stuff, right? Where you do look at what's going on inside your head. I think we're kind of far away from that still. I mean, it's definitely going to happen very soon. Neuralink and all these other companies are cool, but ultimately, like what works with a consumer product right now is the only thing that matters.
All right, last follow.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's actually two questions, but
Okay.
Hearing about your product, I had to think about Simon Edgar's The Circle. I guess you must have Simon Edgar's The Circle. It's a book that actually includes a similar product, but it also includes a camera. So I was just wondering how you made the choice of just sound, because you could obviously include other senses. And maybe the second question, just when you think about the development, do you think about privacy issues, surveillance, data protection? Because it sounds like not you only yourself will be recorded, but also other people that you're involved with.
Right. Yeah. In terms of the camera stuff, I think, like I was saying earlier, it's all about consumer adoption at the start. People are far more terrified of a camera looking at them than a microphone. I do think we are headed there in the future, of course. And regarding to other people's privacy, I mean, I think this is just where we're headed, in my opinion. I think there will definitely be people at the start that will like, oh, I don't want to be around you if you're, doing these kinds of things. But I mean, everyone's going to be wearing an Apple Vision headset soon, and they literally have a camera and a microphone on your face, right? It's just where we all have smartphones and things like that. I think at the start, people were very against it. And like, don't get me wrong, I completely understand that people will be fearful of that. They will absolutely want to burn these things to the ground. But it's idealistic to think that that's where we're headed in the long term, because the only thing that really matters is utility. And I think the utility will simply just be there. And again, I think it really is private, because the whole point of using LLMs for this is there is no human in the loop. You just run things at real time, right? And just kind of delete it. And I think it will get even more real time as the tech progresses, right? I think I don't know if someone else mentioned it here, but what would be very interesting is like always on streaming LLMs. I think that would be kind of the final piece of the puzzle to make it fully secure. But yeah, there's no humans. It's great.
Okay, last question. And then
so you seem to be very confident about the product you're building. Like you said, Whisper and other tools enable to build this in public and pretty quick and iterate quickly. What about like now all the data you're storing, like even though it's bullet points and becoming more and more, how do you see the future, the development to make sure that what you're actually anticipating and proactively doing is correct, is precise, and is it really what the user wanted to basically build something that's useful?
All I'm focused on right now is making the like front end of the product actually that useful. I think a good frame of reference I use is like your keys. Like if you run outside your house without your keys, you're going to run back in and grab them because they save you. How can you make a product that's that essential, especially if it's a wearable, right? In terms of the data, I mean, yes, like the data will be very interesting of how you can build like a consumer product around that as time goes on. I think what I'm most excited for that is how you can kind of network the things together, right? Maybe there's something I know and you know, or just kind of matching people together. There's a lot of interesting possibilities there. I mean, I think it's pretty exciting because again, like it is private, it is secure, and now you can run LLMs against that, and intelligence is just going to get so cheap. I think it's cool that people are hosting Mistral for like 0 cents, right? Or some of them are like, yeah, it's like completely free. It's only going to get so much cheaper. And you're going to be able to run like unlimited intelligence on basically a digital clone of you. And I think that will lead to some very interesting like emergent possibilities. I have no idea at all, but I know it'll be interesting. And that's all that really matters.
Avi, thank you so much. This was great. You're probably going to be better. For sure, a lot of interesting takes. We're looking very much forward to see what you're cooking here in Berlin. But as you said, it's the greatest city in Europe, so I guess it's going to be great.
Definitely. I'm European. Like I'm very true about that.
Cool. So we spent a lot of time now talking about consumer experiences, or like mostly consumer founders. We're now shifting gears towards the B2B Proactivity side. We have Linus from Notion coming up next. So Avi, thank you so much, and welcome, Linus.
Thank you.